drop F-bombs on children as much as you can, or use racial epithets.
Yeah, don't
You
do
know,
those things
don't do those
because we're
things.
now officially live.
Right.
So,
Right.
um, yeah, what are we talking about today? Talking about something to do with something I think we've talked about in the past, right?
Well, we talk about it a lot, you and I. We're we discuss the in general, I think the idea of it fairly often, but I think this is the first time that we actually get to like discuss it as like a topic on the show and look into it as you know. Mike in Manitoba, I see you, bro. I can
Hi,
see you.
hi, Mike.
Yeah, we can see you.
I'm trying to share the other screen with you so that um, you know, I don't know why it's only giving me one display here, but I guess you're not gonna be seeing the screen that I'm working on there, V.
No, damn,
No, you
curses.
know what? I can actually fix that.
You want me to ramble while you do that? You want me to
No,
ramble?
I've already got it sorted. I
You
think.
got it? You got
I
it?
think. Yeah. Don't feel pressured to you know, carry the show or anything.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Try to come up with things to talk about off rip, as they say.
Yeah, I think we got it here. Let's move that, and then we can go ahead and. Are you seeing
Yes,
the
I
screen
see it.
here?
Yeah,
All
see
right.
it.
Okay.
I see it.
All right. All right, everybody at home. I appreciate you
Bearing
bearing
with
with
us.
us. Yeah, Jinx.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, we're talking about Deja Vu today, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about Deja Vu again.
Deja
This
vu
is,
vu.
what's funny is we've been doing a lot of talk about uh, you know, politics, um, corruption in government and that sort of stuff. And we haven't been doing a whole lot of. I guess we did talk a little bit about skinwalkers a couple weeks ago, but um, we talked a little bit about John Podesta, and then before that, we did some CIA stuff and
Oh yeah,
some deep
yeah.
state. We've been doing a lot of government corruption. It's always good to get back to our roots and talk about weird stuff. And so I'm definitely glad we're talking about something other than the corruption around us, and
Right.
hopefully we can keep this episode apolitical, right?
Yeah. Try to avoid avoid going into all that.
Yeah. So,
So
anyways, when I voted for Donald Trump in
yeah.
2016,
Right away.
um,
Yeah.
no, and I'm not wearing a political hat today. I'm wearing an apolitical hat here as well. But yeah, let's. I guess we instead of jumping right into it, I don't want to do that because that's not our style.
No.
What we'll do? We'll start with the shot. What are we cheersing to?
Well, I was thinking that we could toast to Kobe Bryant since he finally passed.
Stop it. Stop. Shut. Or what does
I
Ricky
couldn't help
Gervais?
that.
What does Ricky Virginia say? Ricky Gervais
Yeah,
say
yeah.
whenever he says a joke and he knows that it landed and it hurt a lot of feelings, he goes, "Shut up, shut up,"
Shut up. Yeah, shut up.
all the time.
Shut up. Yeah.
Um, yeah, Kobe Bryant. Whatever.
Yeah, we don't cheers to
What does he do?
rapists. We don't toast to rapists.
Didn't that guy fuck a 19-year-old like
He
very
just like
violently?
raped some chick, and then they were like, "Well, he makes a lot of baskets, so."
Yeah, so we got to forgive him for that.
Yeah.
Hey Ryan in the chat, welcome aboard. And anybody else who's joined us, feel free to talk shit in the chat. That's what it's there for.
Right.
Um, so what are we cheersing to? What else? Oh,
I don't know.
let's
I
cheer.
don't
You
know.
know what? Let's cheers to the coronavirus.
Oh.
It's been
Okay.
doing it's been
Fair
doing the
enough.
Lord's work over in
The Chinamen. The
over in
Chinamen
the
are.
well. I was gonna try to out racist you and say in the Orient,
Oh yeah,
but
the
you
Orient.
beat me to it. So cheers to the coronavirus. May I never sniff any coronavirus.
Yeah. Yeah. Cheers. Toast. Saloon.
That's what they say.
Or what? What did Jerry say? Nostrovia.
Yeah. Well, he's a racist, or not a racist. He's a Russian. You can't call people racist, but you can call them Russian bots and trolls.
Ryan Tremblay wants to know if that's a Yoda figurine in the background.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm glad you noticed. Let me pull it down here for you. This is from the original trilogy.
Look at
Old
that.
school Yoda. I bought it. Now, here's the thing. I'm a collector of action figures and toys, figurines. I have a lot of Star Wars ones here. I got a Jango Fett. Got to show off all my toys for all the people who are on YouTube who think I'm cool still. Now you will find out the truth. Here's a Darth Vader. We got a little Darth Maul here with a broken lightsaber. It's the single one. Then we got a Chewie, a Luke, got a Killer Croc who's in here for some reason. It was actually a gift
Nice.
from my children, so it of course made it into my my display. And then we've got my socialism sucks pin.
I thought we were going to be apolitical.
No, I had to. All right, that's an economic system. It has nothing to do with politics. I have
Right.
a Yoda thing here, but I buy a lot of these Yoda things that I have right now. I've had several over the years, but a lot of the ones that I have now are because my kids found that they found that Yoda Seagulls Stop It Now song from the Bad Lip Reading. And
Oh yeah.
so Yoda became a big part of the Miller household for a while. So I was just, I pulled out all my Yoda shit and then started buying new stuff as, as I encountered it. So
Right.
I have a lot of Yoda stuff now. What were we talking about? Something to do
We're
with
talking. We're
socialism?
talking about.
So let me tell you the problem with socialism.
Here's the administration that didn't work.
You know what? That's what I do love that whole argument about people talking about socialism and oh, that's not real socialism. Well, then, what at what point are you like, well, we need to implement changes because like millions of our people have died. Like, at what point do they step in and say, hey, this wasn't real socialism when it's happening? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, anyone who advocates for socialism now is somebody who's just not paid attention, as far as I'm concerned. Because I mean, we have all the case studies, we have all the historic evidence.
I always like to go, are you familiar with history at all? That's what I always like to. Are you familiar with it?
I usually just say, where did you graduate college? I didn't. Oh, okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. Then you find out that they're like, oh, well, I got my GED in such and such a place. And I'm like, they don't ask any socialism questions on the GED test? No? Okay. They don't ask any economic systems and tyrannical dictatorship governments. They don't ask any questions about that sort of stuff. No. Cuba, Venezuela. I mean, we have a living proof of what happens to a socialist community or a socialist country happening right now in the world, and people are still like, well, that's not real socialism. Okay, whatever, guy. So now that we've gotten off track onto a political whatever, here's an Ewok to soothe things over for our socialist friends. Who have already tuned out of the show. They're like, what are you talking about? These guys, all they did was talk about Ewoks and Jango Fett and shit. So what did you do? What did you do this week, V? It's been a week since we've talked. Since you and I have talked. We don't talk between the shows. So let's do it right now. Let's talk right now on the air.
Let's see. What did I do this week? Well, it's the end of the month, so like my finances are dwindling. It's like that point when you go, well, do I dig into the savings just so that I can like have like some like decent food, or do I just eat what I have left, in the cupboard, if you're, British or whatever. I think they say pantry. Do they say what do they say? Pantry, right?
They say the boot. It's called
The boot. Right. So I dig in there and then I eat like pork and beans, and I realize how disgusting that is. Like, dude, like pork and beans just by itself. Like, I feel like I'm a hobo with a stick and bindle. You get the can of beans, and then you just like kind of it like have you ever like gotten like a can of something like a perishable, and then you pour it into like a pan or like a pot, and you feel like you're dumping dog food or cat food.
Yeah, of course.
You're like, this is like literally dog food.
And it makes like sex noises. It makes gross sex noises while you're trying to shake it out.
Yeah. And you're just like watching it going, this is what I'm about to eat, and it's literally like, this is what I would be feeding a dog. You know what I mean? Like, this is, and then you feel a little ashamed, but you go, fuck it. That's like the best motto to have, I think, sometimes, is when you're starting to feel kind of like I don't know, shamed about something, the best thing you can do is just go fuck it, you know? And then like if
I
you say
agree.
it like really emphatically too, it's a little bit more easier to let go. I find that I'm really good at letting go of things like whatever. I just go, fuck it. Fuck
Well, yeah, I was
it.
gonna say you always do the fuck it.
Yeah, yeah, so that's it. And then I think other than that, today I was doing some, as we were talking about our topic, and so I was doing my Wikipedia research and I stumbled across some interesting things. You know how you do the Wikipedia and then you stumble across all these other things, and next thing you know, you're reading about like particle accelerators and like
There's
what makes
a term for that. Yeah, it's
the Wikipedia hole or something
yeah,
like
something where you end
like
up you go in looking for something totally natural and then you end up on the trying to solve the string theory or whatever. You know, like I use that joke all the time, but that's like really what ends up happening is you're like talking about the opposite side. What's on the end of a black hole? Like, whoa, whoa.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so I stumbled across some interesting things. And now this is gonna seem a little odd to I know our audience. They already have this preconception of me as being this like total degenerate, deplorable reprobate. And I just want to assure them that I'm not as deplorable as you would believe. But anyways, what I stumbled across was these new and
He is.
yeah, yeah. Be sure to tell him, and Tom can attest to that. What I stumbled across today was that they have these new, for lack of a better word, basically they're blow up dolls. And now you don't blow them up anymore. Like back in the day, we used to like you'd have to go to the store at the porn store, and then you get the doll, and then you physically blow it up. Yeah, like that's why they're called blow up dolls, right? You have to blow them up. Well, now they have these new like they're insane, dude. Like they look like people. Like I don't know if you've seen these and
What kind
like
of blow up dolls were you using before that didn't look like people?
no, no, no. Right, right. Well, okay, here's the thing is, like we talked about the old Jinx, from Pokemon Go and how she looks like a blow up doll with just like the open mouth, and that's it.
Yeah.
They're just like it's literally just like an inner tube, an inner tube with like a face drawn on it. And so now they have these like it's crazy, dude. Like they look like people. And so I was kind of like reading about them more, and like apparently they even use them for like more than just like, what they're intended what they're intended to be used for.
Like
But I was
what?
like,
Like what
well,
are they being used for?
like in film, like okay, like if you ever see a movie where like somebody gets like blown up or something, they're so realistic now that they can use these same type of dolls essentially. And like they're not made for the like okay, they go the same manufacturer that makes the dolls that you bang makes for lack of a better word, the same ones that you bang are the same ones that go to like movie companies that they go, okay, we need to have this car explode and whatever. And then they go, so we need something extremely realistic. We need the body parts to be able to like fly off or whatever. And then all of a sudden, there's this company that they go, well, we specialize in, dolls that you bang, you put your man gravy into, and there it is. That's basically what happened. So you get where I'm going with this.
Yeah, no, I'm tracking. I'm
It's just
yeah.
something that I researched, and then I mean I didn't research. Okay, I stumbled across stumbled across it, and then all of a sudden it was just like extensive. Like wow, like look at all these things that it can do, and like it makes you question like where the future is headed. Like what's going on here. Like in the future, are we going to see like dolls that are so realistic that like women are just like a thing of the past? Like I don't want to.
I
I
think
don't
we're
really want
at that point already though because remember I know we talked about this at one point the womb that you can have like the in your living room. It's like it's just like an artificial womb and it's almost like a little machine that they make the baby in the petri dish like you can get the eggs from the say the mother or whatever and then you can get the sperm from the father or a
to.
donor or whatever
Right.
and they put them together in a petri dish and then they transfer it into this artificial womb and you can watch this baby grow up before like sea monkeys
Right,
before
right,
your
right.
very eyes like you can so at this point women are becoming less and less useful in society. And they always say that was always the argument, was women were like, oh well, they can sit here and they have their blow up dolls and all this bullshit, but they're never going to be able to replace us because they'll need us to make babies, right? Well, now that's not the case. You
Right.
can have this artificial womb create a baby, as long as you get the donor, and there are plenty of donors. I mean, there's plenty of eggs that are frozen, and I'm sure you could get a hold of. I'm sure like there are other ways to get a hold of
The black
eggs or
market.
whatever. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And so women are becoming less and less useful, and you're seeing that more now with this men go their own way movement. And a lot of them have, like, I'm married, I've got 3 kids, I've got, I'm about as locked down as you can possibly be in that realm. But like, I watch these men go their own way accounts, which like women typically will, and the feminist guys or whatever, they sit and they call them incels, the incel involuntary celibacy. So they call them incels or whatever, and they'll just pick on these guys that don't want to, get locked down with the chick, and then they just go and have their own life, and they have all this extra disposable income because they don't have a girlfriend or a wife
Right.
or a partner,
Yeah, yeah,
and they don't
yeah.
have kids, and they live this totally awesome just dude life, and then they go and then
Yeah.
they hook up, kind of like what you were doing. You were kind of doing the MGTOW lifestyle for a while, where you were just
Hmm.
going and hitting up the red light district, and that's kind of
Yeah,
what they do.
yeah.
They treat women like legitimately just like objects, like, hey, I'm
Well, I
gonna
think
get what I gotta get, and then I'm gonna
and
move on.
and I think that's why I kind of like lean that way after a while, is because it became such like second nature where, yeah, every now and then I'd get into a relationship and it was always such a pain. Like it's such a hassle to be in a relationship because you have to do all these things and like, be nice and, not say certain things. And the worst part I think about being in that initial relationship or dating is you have to be like, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how to say it, but like faggy. Like you have to be all like, oh, I gotta like I gotta be nice to this chick and I can't curse around her and I can't do this, and that. And to me, I'm like, well, I'm just me. And so like if a girl likes me, then it's because, she likes that crass attitude that I have. And the thing is like after a while, that kind of just becomes taxing. Like I know when I was younger, it was like, yeah, let's get chicks, dude, and like, we'll do whatever and go to clubs and it was like that, hormone fueled what do you call it, where you just want to go out and get laid all the time. But then like once I started getting older, and like I'm learning this too from like, reading about people in the middle age, like that's crazy to think about myself as middle aged, but like you don't have that like high sex drive anymore where you're like, I have to get laid. Like I remember I met this kid and he was like, oh, I'm gonna go get laid and go get these chicks and blah 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 blah. And I remember thinking, like, that just sounds boring to me. Like, that sounds like too much work. And he was just like, what, are you gay, dude? You can't. I'm like, no, I don't want to put all my effort and time and energy into like something that's just going to be annoying later on. And so like, and then, living in Germany, you have the red light district. So you go, well, I could either go, and I did, I dated some girls in Germany, but it was easier to just go, well, I don't want to like, here's what we would do is we'd
Yeah,
go
like,
to the,
why wine and dine somebody if you can just go and throw? You could spend probably the same amount of money that you would have trying to win this girl over,
yeah,
and you can just
exactly.
go throw it at a hooker and say, I want to ass to mouth, like, and most chicks are not going to be into that. They're not going to be like, yeah, I'll do anal on the first date. Like,
Right.
you can just throw it at one of these whores, and they would do it. And they're not going to have any diseases because they get tested, unlike the dating pool, who is
Right. Yeah.
traditionally all crudded up like the monkey on Outbreak. I mean, they're more crudded
Yeah.
up than like a guy in China right now.
Yeah.
Like they're filthy, and
it's
I mean
it's
that's
so
just
hard
that's
not to
life.
advocate in favor of that because of all those like benefits and like things that we just like listed off, and those are just like a few of the things, where I go, well, there's all these other things that you could say about it, and the reason why it's so great, and like, I'll always be an advocate of the women of the night and prostitutes and like the sex industry. I'll always be an advocate of that
Yeah,
because
like
I
that
think it's
time I said something and you were like, "Well, hold on, professor.
yeah.
Let me school you on the."
But my point is this, is that like, and like I know I'm getting older and I know like, like middle aged, everybody goes, oh, like I'm at that point where it's like you question, should I have kids, like should I like procreate and like worry about my like legacy, or should I just enjoy being like single and like bang prostitutes for the rest of my life? Like think about Charlie Sheen. Now I know he's kind of a bad example because he has like
Because he has AIDS.
because he has AIDS. But like this guy, like have you ever like watched him in like anything where he's just talking normally? The guy is happy. Like hands down, he's a happy person. Like you probably go, well, yeah, it's because he's all coked out or whatever. But I mean, in spite of that, you have to kind of go. There's something behind
You try to
his
handle
like.
my brain, you can't even handle it, man.
There's something behind his like madness that you have to like appreciate, I think. So that's my pedestal, what do you call it, soapbox for the day. Is that it's I know it started about blow up dolls.
I've got tiger's blood, man. Adonis DNA.
Honest DNA. I know it started that way, but that's kind of where I'm at when it comes to like the whole procreating thing. I don't know, man. It seems like a lot of work. At
Yeah.
this point, I'm like, it seems like a lot of work.
Yeah, it is. And that's I looking back, I wouldn't change anything. I'm happy with my station in life, but the yeah, it is. It's a lot of work, and it's a constant, like a lot of people, and we talked about this even the other day, you and I, about something totally unrelated, but we ended up on this topic where I said like that first year of marriage is really, really, dating. It's cool because it's like,
Right.
I can leave whenever I want, I can do whatever I want. She's not around me all the time. But then like
Mhm.
that first year of marriage, a lot of people forget. They're like, oh, well now like this person is essentially an extension of myself, and I have to at all times accommodate this new thing in my life, and this new appendage basically, and I
Right.
have to actually care what they think, and I have to, I mean, they're going to see me when I go into the bathroom, like, that first year they're going to be like taking stock of like, are they paying attention to how long I'm shitting, like how long I'm sitting and then you get like real weird about it, and then
Yeah.
you have a lot of people who just forget about all that, and they're like, oh, well, it's going to be just like when we were dating. We're going to have sex
No,
nonstop. But
yeah.
like a lot of women, and you got to like account for this too, is like there's dudes who don't pay attention to their new counterpart, right? And then
Hmm.
you've got chicks who are like, uh, all of a sudden they're married. They're like, I don't have to put out anymore. I don't have to
Right.
do all this stuff. I don't have to give blowjobs as often as I did. I don't have to be sexy all the time. Like back when you were dating, typically they were wearing, sexy clothes, sexy underwear, because when you went home with them or when they came home with you were going to see them, and your opinion was going to shape future events. When you're married, they're
Right.
like, oh, well, now he's legally stuck with me, so I can wear granny panties. I can,
Yeah.
I can fake a headache every night if I want to. I mean, that's just part of marriage. And like that first year, there's a lot of conflict that a lot of people don't realize. That's why I think a lot of people struggle with that first year. And I mean, uh, yeah, I lived it. I lived through the first year, and it was very difficult. But now I'm 13 years into my marriage, and we're just as happy as we've ever been, I suppose, and
Right.
maybe even happier. I think so. I dig it. I dig the married life, but at the same time, it's not for everybody. And it does require a lot of effort on both parties, both parts. So, and then once you add kids into it, then it becomes like, oh, great, now I've got three more people. Now I got more people to keep
Yeah.
happy or whatever.
Yeah.
And I tell people that all the time too. Was when they start having kids, I'm like, I didn't have any emotional attachment to my kids for months. Because when they were born, it wasn't like some revelation for me, like, oh, I love this child with my entirety of my being. Like
Right.
some
Right.
people
Right.
say that, and then I didn't feel it. I was like, okay, I am responsible for this child. This is my child. But it's just like some stranger coming into your life. You don't instantly love that person with your everything that you have to offer. Like it takes some work on both people's parts, and likewise for them to start caring about me, it was also a little bit of work because I had to kind of win them over just as much as they had to win me over. So
Right. Right.
it's a fascinating dichotomy, or whatever, between like what people think how it goes, and what people like what it actually is. And then
Right.
it's a fun adventure, but
Well,
that's
I
not what we're
always
here to
default.
talk
I
about.
always default to you when I do have questions about that. I always default to you when I have questions about that. So, I think it's good. It's good to know that I have somebody. What am I trying to say here? Without sounding gay, I appreciate having you as a friend and being able to, ask you questions and stuff.
You
And
better
when I
tack a
go,
no homo. You better tack a no homo on that.
yeah, no, yeah. No, I guess my point is this is that I haven't settled down, and I think like going into almost 40 here, I'm starting to go, well, is that ever going to happen? And like, like the fact of the matter is if I want to meet a girl my age, chances are she's like got a few kids or like,
Hell, she
divorced
might
a
even
couple
have
times.
grandkids.
Yeah, I guess
Like at
that's
that age, they
true.
really do. Like the
Yeah,
girls
that's
are,
true.
women are getting like younger when they start having kids, and then by contrast, you've got like the 16, 17, 18-year old mothers uh, who, when they grow up, typically they don't instill like traditional conservative family values into their children because they were 16 years old when they started having kids.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're the sort of font of knowledge when it comes to traditional family values. So yeah, they yeah, that's 40 years old. That's pretty common, I think, for
Right.
grandmas now, which is pretty gross. But I mean, you could be like that guy who, at least when it comes time for birthdays and Christmas, like instead of having to buy them something nice as like a dad, you can just buy them or send them a card with like a $5 check in it or something. And because you're a grandpa instead,
Yeah,
you just
yeah,
skipped
yeah.
it all, skip all the hard part, and then you
I
get to
guess
just
that
be
is a
you get to
cool.
walk
Yeah.
around racist and wearing a bathrobe and smoking a cigar all the time because you're just that racist old grandpa.
Oh, that sounds pretty awesome. That's basically what I do now anyway, so.
So let's talk about deja vu.
Okay, all right.
That's what we're talking about now that we've gone 30 minutes into it, just talking about being a racist grandpa. And let's talk about deja vu.
Okay.
I already did that joke about. I think we've talked about this before, but it bears repeating. Let's move right into it. This kind of came up out of the blue. This was a topic that not necessarily did we have it on like the slot or slated for future episodes. This was just something that I think we were talking about yesterday,
Yeah.
and you said, I said, oh yeah, that we should definitely talk about that. And then immediately after, you were like, yeah, so what are we talking about on the show tomorrow? And I was like, yeah, we should
Copy
definitely
paste.
talk about that. So let's
Yeah.
talk about the glitch in the matrix that is deja vu. What do you know what deja vu is? What did your Wikipedia tell you?
Well, actually, I have it pulled up because there's a few
Oh well,
things that I wanted
that's
to.
that's even that's double cheating. You're supposed
I
to do it
wanted.
from memory.
Well, there were a few things that I wanted to reference because I found some really interesting like gems, like things that we could talk about. But deja vu, the term actually means already seen. So there's an interesting like background behind it where it comes from like this French, whatever, French gay thing or whatever. And so there's a lot of theories. Like there's a lot of interesting theories. There's a lot of things that like, obviously the scientific community goes, well, it's not paranormal. It's not. They immediately go, well, here's some like ideas of what it can be. And there's a few that like I kind of read up on, and there's some that like you go, well, that makes sense. And I think the one that you talked about was the one that I kind of leaned towards, like that makes sense to me. But there was also a theory in the scientific community that what they call the dream-based explanation, and that goes to what we were talking about yesterday. So I think that's I think it's pretty interesting that even though the scientific community goes, well, it's not paranormal.
Well, that's their default answer. They have to like the thing about science is they can't accept the paranormal as a possibility because they're like if they can't explain it, it just doesn't exist. Is typically how they handle it, which seems kind of non-scientific to me. Like
Hmm.
it's kind of like one of those things where if they can't explain it, then there's no possibility that it could ever exist or be explained just because some guys who study certain things say that it can't exist, which is like the most ignorant, maybe is a good word I would like to use for it.
Hmm.
There's another word. What's another word? The one where it's like you think that you're better than. I don't want to say pretentious.
Condescending.
Condescending. That's a good one. But yeah, it's that in that line of thinking where they're like, well, we are so learned that if
What is it?
something that we can't explain it, then clearly it doesn't exist.
Like
Um, yeah,
pedantic, maybe.
yeah, that might be
Maybe.
a good one too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the sort of thing that pisses me off. And like, again, it's very unscientific where they're just like so quick to dismiss something. But even the scientific community, as of now, has not settled on something with deja vu, which it's something that's existed for as far back as humankind has. I'm sure it's been brought up, like even back in like the Middle Ages. They're like, oh well, I feel like I've already experienced this before, get the medicine man over here, and I'm sure like it's been studied for even as far back as like modern history goes, where people are actually like looking into learning shit about the human experience, and they still haven't figured it out. And at this point, we've got everything at our disposal, and they still haven't come to a general consensus. You'd think that
Yeah.
somehow they would have accidentally stumbled upon it, but they haven't. So we're kind of in a position here, and that's what this episode is about. Is we're going to kind of talk about the various theories behind deja vu, and hopefully get into a little bit more of the paranormal stuff, because that's the stuff that I'm interested in, and that's the sort of stuff that I tend to believe when science can't explain it or settle on a decision. I tend to believe that it's probably more paranormal than it is scientific.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, go ahead and continue on with your Wikipedia,
With the spiel.
your Wiki
Okay,
cheater.
yeah, wicked cheater. So here's some of the explanations, and there's two, four, five theories, and I'll kind of give you like snippets basically. So there's the first one is the split perception explanation, which is basically like as you have this experience where it's like the sensory is two in a row, right? So the first experience in a brief, it says the first experience is brief, degraded, occluded, and or distracted, immediately followed by the second perception, which might be familiar because the person naturally related it to the first input. So it's basically like saying you're in a situation where you're half awake or you're half paying attention and you're not really like you go, oh, wait a second. And so your brain processes it twice, which is actually kind of a running theme here with all these like theories and whatnot. But I think what the most interesting thing is that I discovered from my Wikipedia research and uh, scouring the internet was that apparently deja vu is more common with people who like watch movies and like travel a lot. Like apparently that's like a study that's been done is that like people that like watch movies tend to have more deja vu, which I don't know what the correlation is there, but I do find that fascinating because I watch a ton of
I think
movies.
that has to do something with like the more you see, because like let's be honest, like you've got you see more of the world, and like you said, traveling, if
Hmm.
you're seeing more things that are less common in your day-to-day life, and you're aware of more of what's going on around in the world, and you've been able to experience these new experiences, you're more likely to have an instance of deja vu based on those previous memories,
Right.
because you're like, oh, I've seen this type of cheese before, like that you otherwise might not have seen. And again, it's your
Yeah.
subconscious being like, oh, yeah, okay, I recognize this. But in reality, it's just like a cheese that is not common in that region of the world or whatever, or that
Yeah.
that dairy shop.
and
And
it can be explained that like you have seen it, but your brain thinks that you like experienced it, and so like maybe you saw it in a movie or maybe you traveled and like you saw it happen to somebody else, and like so you automatically associate that with something that happened to you, and you go, oh, well, that's deja vu, and so that's kind of like one of the floating theories, I think, which is really interesting. Like the more it goes on, I'll continue here. The implicit memory or the memory-based explanation here, and I'll just read it here. It says research has associated deja vu experiences with good memory functions. Recognition memory enables people to realize the event or activity that their experience has happened before. When people experiencing deja vu, they may have their recognition memory triggered by situations which they have never encountered. So the whole idea behind this one is that they're so good at like their memory is so good that it's like processing it so quickly, and it's like they have these really good memory functions that all of a sudden they're going, oh, this is like That's like I'm learning it, but I feel like I've done it before because my brain is processing it so fast. And now here's something that's interesting
I
about this.
feel
A
like you
lot of
said all of the sudden. Did you?
Yeah, I did. You know I do that. All of a sudden,
Okay,
it
that's
seems
better.
so unnatural to me. Okay, every time I say all of a sudden,
Some might
all
say
of the
that's
sudden.
supernatural.
Yeah. So anyway, so here's the thing that's interesting to me about deja vu as well, especially with the implicit memory theory here, is that a lot of this stuff is common with people that have epilepsy too, like brain problems, like people that
Right,
have
right,
brain,
right.
like people that have brain problems and stuff. They go, "Oh, I've experienced deja vu," and they're like, "Well, you're just having like a,
Well, that was, you know what?
a stroke."
That was the thing back in like the 1920s and later as time went on, but anytime you had something that was wrong with you, they were like, "Oh, that's a mental deficient. That's a mental illness, like homosexuality, over masturbation, uh, and all that sort of stuff." They would just quick. They were quick to be like, "Oh, that's a he's he belongs in the loony bin. He belongs in the booby hatch or
Yeah,
the
the
nervous
funny
hospital or
farm.
whatever.
The
Yeah,
funny
he
farm.
belongs in the asylum. Send him away." But in reality, it was like something totally natural, like
And they just drill a hole in your head and
yeah, they got to let the demons out. Hell, so the demons
yeah.
are gonna get out.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Exactly. So let's see here. Where'd you go? You still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Oh, okay, cool.
Always.
Okay, so moving on, this one I think you'll find interesting. It's called cryptomnesia. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Maybe
Cryptomnesia.
cryptomnesia.
Reconstruction of a memory. Yeah.
Right, right. Reconstruction of the memory. And I'll read this one too, because I really find this one kind of interesting. It says another possible explanation for the phenomenon of deja vu is the occurrence of cryptomnesia, which is where information learned is forgotten, but nevertheless stored in the brain. And similar occurrences invoke the contained knowledge, leading to the feeling of familiarity because the event or experience being experienced has already been experienced in the past, known as deja vu, right? This is like kind of the most common one here. Like this is the one that goes, "I've this has happened to me before." Like everybody goes deja vu. This is like I always I like whenever I experience deja vu, like I do this bit to my dad all the time. Whenever I see a car that's like the same car that we're in, I go, "Great Scott, Marty, there we are." It always is good for a
remember,
laugh, but
remember on the Saving Silverman, Sarah Silverman program when she goes, or she drives up in her little Ford Focus, and some guy pulls up next to her in the same exact car, and he goes, "Hey, same car," and she goes, "Hey, same car."
yes, just like what a thing to say. Anyways, it says some experts suggest that is a process of reconstruction rather than recall or of fixed established events. This reconstruction comes from stored components involving elaborations, distortions, and omissions. Each successive recall of the event is merely a recall of the last reconstruction. The proposed sense of recognition, right, deja vu or recognition, involves achieving a good match between the present experience as two separate experiences, with the second seeming to be reliving the first, right? So this is the one I think, like I said, is the most common, where people go, "Well, this has happened to me before." And that's always like the first, I think I would say arguably the first instinct with deja vu is you go, "This has happened before, man." And I know for me, every time deja vu happens, I'm always trying to like predict things. I'm always like, immediately I have that feeling. And like, I think that's like the most interesting thing about deja vu is that feeling. And that's why I kind of argue, which is so funny about our talk the other day, how you were like, "Well, it's just the brain processing things too fast." And I'm the one going, "No, man, it's paranormal." It's like our role switch.
Yeah, it's so rare because normally you're like, well, there's got to be some kind of explanation for this, and meanwhile I'm like, no, it was demons, But no, that's yeah, no, I get it. This is one of those things where like one of those rare instances in which I'm like the voice of reason, and I'm like, no, no,
Right.
no, well, hold on, let's talk this through, let's figure this out together. Um, but yeah, the was that the last one? Or I think there's a dream.
Yeah,
You
the
still have the
dream. Yeah,
dream
the last
based
one
one.
is the dream-based explanation, and this is the one that I'm actually really fond of, and like I kind of lean towards as like the theory that I like will get behind. Like this is the theory that I kind of go, this has to be it. The dream-based explanation is that dreams can also be used to explain the
You
experience of
solved
deja
the
vu.
mystery.
Yeah,
This is the one.
this is the one. Yeah, this is the
All
one.
right,
And
science, shut it down. We're
yeah,
good.
shut it down. This is it. This has got to be it. So it says they're related in three different aspects. Firstly, some deja vu experiences duplicate the situation in dreams instead of waking conditions. According to the survey done by Brown, right, this is the statistic, 20% of the respondents reported their deja vu experiences were from dreams, and 40% of the respondents reported they were both reality and dreams. So, secondly, people may experience deja vu because some elements in their remembered dreams were shown. A research done by some dude, Zugger, 1966, supported this idea by investigating the relationship between remembered dreams and deja vu experiences and suggested that there's a strong correlation. And last, thirdly, people may experience deja vu during a dream state, which links deja vu with dream frequency. So this is the one that I get behind because I always feel like it's got to be something to do with dreams. And I like, I'm always going, it's not paranormal, dude. It's not. But in this one, this is the one, like, I always love dreams. And like, I'm an avid studier of like the symbology in dreams and like, what does it mean? Yes.
That's what do they call it on Boondock Saints when the dude's like, "What's the symbology there?" And he goes,
Symbology.
"Perhaps you mean the symbolism, the
Yes.
symbolism."
No, the symbology here is what I'm getting at here is that I like the idea of like something that is within me being like I don't know, like I don't know, I don't want to say paranormal, but otherworldly, like I always like the idea that dreams are something that like we're losing consciousness, but we're stepping into an alternate reality, like that. I love the idea of that. And there's no way to like prove it wrong, like it's so crazy because like here's all this time that we've spent, having research and all this stuff. Like we can make fake boobs for chicks and you can turn men into women now, but we still don't
Well, you
understand.
can turn a man into a less masculine man.
Yeah,
Is what John Hoskins has to
yeah, yeah,
say.
yeah.
So
You cut off the wiener, or you cut it down the middle, and then you fold it over.
have you ever watched those videos of like them doing the transgender surgery?
I got to the point where they cut it down the middle, and that was when I was like, nope, this isn't for me.
Yeah, this is not. I am not the target audience here.
It's not something that I can watch. But what I'm getting at here is I really am fascinated by dreams, and I think that's why I'm glad that we got to do this topic because it kind of delves a little bit into that, and I like the idea of it being maybe I don't know precognitive, like maybe people really are psychic, like wouldn't that be cool? What are your thoughts?
So
I'm interested.
your hope is that within you lies some kind of like uh special power. That's your big takeaway from this is that you want to be special. You want to be a unique snowflake.
Yeah, well, doesn't everybody secretly have the desire to have a superpower? Doesn't everybody secretly go, well,
And yours
like,
is the ability to sometimes see the future in short instances, maybe.
well, no, and like I'll divulge a little background story. When I was a kid, when I was like 10 years old, I would read like X-Men comics, and I was like every weekend, like $1.25, I'd get an X-Men comic. And there was a point when I read so many X-Men comics that I understood like the lore, and like in a mutant gets his like it's like comes of age or becomes a mutant when they turn like 14, 13 or 14. So there was a point in my life when I really thought like at 13 I'm finally going to become a mutant. And like I really believe that, like I genuinely believe that, like that's when I'm going to get my mutant ability. It's probably going to be like gambits. I'm going to be able to charge up cards. Like that was like what I was leaning towards. Like I just assumed that was what it was going to be, but like that didn't happen,
And you
obviously.
didn't
I
think it was weird that there weren't like 14 to 18-year-old kids who didn't have superpowers around you?
no, I like really like without a doubt believe that that was going to happen. Like even though there was no, I'm not kidding you. Like this
So
is
your
all
mutant power was not like awareness.
not being aware that other people didn't have mutant powers.
It
Like
was
it
not
doesn't.
perception, and that was not your mutant power.
Uh, No. But that never happened. And so, I grew older and was like, man, I never got my mutant power.
You were cheated.
So cheated. And so when I get old, like I'm being totally serious. I'm being totally serious and honest with you right now too. Like as an adult, I go, man, like how did I not get like a superpower? Like like
You should. Everyone
I
should.
still should get a superpower. And like even to the point where and here's something more interesting too, is I watched this video. I'm so into these like list videos where they're like
Hmm.
the 10 things that such and such is whatever is gay, right? And the one that I watched recently was like
Well, I watch different ones. I don't watch that one.
yeah, not that one specifically, but like the one that I watched recently was human beings with actual superpowers. And it was like the statistic, right? 1 in 6 whatever million people have super strength. And like this is a real thing. Like a kid is born and he just gets muscles faster. And so he's like 4 years old and he's like ripped, dude. Like this is a real thing. You've seen it on the Inquirer next to Bat Boy. But
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
like a
yeah. I remember that kid.
and like
Muscle Boy.
uh, yeah,
Muscle
boy
Boy and
and
Bat Boy team up to
yeah, the
take down the
Satan
mafia or whatever.
released from hell or whatever. But it goes further. Like there's like most of them are resistances, and like lightning resistance is one. Like a person can like withstand electricity, and there's like poison resistance, and like it's really interesting. Like we laugh about them because they don't seem like superpowers, but when you really think about it, there's like some weird things that like, and they're actual mutations. Like that's how they're referred to as mutations. Like a person that like has what do you call it? Is somebody that's left-handed and
Hmm.
right. What is ambidextrous?
Hmm.
Ambidextrous. That is a mutation. And like someone with green and blue eyes, like that's a mutation too, apparently. So this is
Yeah, they I'm left-handed, by the way, top 10%. And
mhm.
which I will not live as long as you right-handed bastards, but that's okay because I get to live my life rubbing it in your face that I can write with a different hand than you do.
Well,
The
I was born left-handed, but I went to a Christian school and they made me
they
right-handed.
they beat the devil out of you.
I was of the devil, so I was in.
My parents used to when I started. I remember when I guess when they found out I was left-handed. I was. I remember I was eating and I would eat with my left hand. I'd use my left hand. I'd hold my fork and eat with it. And then they were like, "Put your fork down," and I was like, "All right." And then they took my fork and spoon and moved them all around the plate or whatever. And they said, "Put your hands under the table. Now take them up. Now eat your food again." And I picked up my fork with my left hand, and they're like, "All right, I guess he's left-handed." Like that was their test for me. And then
Huh.
the same thing with when I was writing and all that stuff. I vividly remember that. And then over the years, I actually broke my arm when I was in 6th grade, my left arm of all arms, and I
Hmm.
broke it really bad. Like I almost lost it, and I had to for like 6 months. I was in this temporary cast because they had to take it off and check the pins and shit,
Hmm.
and the stitches and staples and all that. But I had to learn how to write with my right hand when I was in 6th grade, and so I became ambidextrous. I beat the mutation because I did not have that mutation that you're talking about, but I was
Hmm.
able to teach myself how to be ambidextrous. And since then, now I can throw with either hand. I can use scissors. Not that it really matters, but like for whatever reason, I can use whichever scissors I need to. You know how people are like, I can't use left-handed
Yeah,
scissors.
yeah, yeah.
Or like if we're playing baseball, they're like, we don't have any left-handed mitts, and then I'm like, all right, I'll just throw right-handed today, I guess.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, I kind of had to teach myself how to do it because I lost the use of my left arm for 6 months. But no, I get it. I get it. That whole mutation thing. I think a lot of people get all butthurt about that term because, and no pun intended, because they talk about the gay gene, right? And no, it's sort of a joke, but not really, because I mean,
Hmm.
let's be fair, let's be honest here. When we talk about the gay gene, I said one time I was talking to somebody and they said, "Well, it's a genetic it's genetic." And I was like, "So then it's a genetic abnormality." And they were like, "Well, no, it's not an abnormality." And they got all offended because I called it an abnormality.
Yeah,
And
well, if it was, it would be,
I'm
right?
like,
Yeah,
if
that's.
you were, the point of existence and the point of like, furthering the species is to procreate. If you're gay, you're not procreating. Like there's nothing wrong with that, but that's an abnormality from like the normal thing. You know, you go and you procreate and you further the species. That's normal. Not doing that and it being because of your genetic difference makes it abnormal in my eyes. And they're like, well, it's not an abnormality. And I'm like, then I guess it's a mutation. And they're like, well, it's not a mutation. It's not a mutation. And they get all upset about it, no matter what you say. And then they come to find out that the gay gene doesn't even exist. It's all based on societal upbringing.
They
So
can't back up their pseudoscience.
yeah, and that's
That's what it comes to.
and then they get more concerned with words and terminology than they do about the actual science. But I mean, this is also the same science that says that we've got 12 years left to live if we don't throw all our money into a big old fat pool with Al Gore and his beachfront property. So, but yeah, as far as with Deja Vu, now I know you're big into the dream thing. I think of this is like one of those rare instances, like I said, where and like you said, where I don't believe that it's a paranormal thing. I think it can be. But I think the most reasonable explanation for it, and this may just be my mind, because the mind is such a weird thing that it can trick you into believing certain things. So maybe that's all it is. But for me, the study that I read, or the theory that I read, that I mostly ascribe to, right, is that when you have deja vu, it's merely, and I think you kind of touched on it on one of the things, but it wasn't fully what I had read at one point, where you're taking in so much information and your body is under so much stress that your brain messes up and it files what you're experiencing in the long-term memory instead of the short-term. So when normally it would go into your short-term for the day, and then at the end of the day, when your brain is or not necessarily the end of the day, but when your brain has a chance to process all your short-term memories, it moves the stuff into the long-term memory after it's appropriately filed and all that crap. And your brain has a great way of doing that and moving stuff where it needs to go. But if it's overburdened or overloaded, it can sometimes just skip the short-term memory and push it back to the long-term memory right away, which makes you think, oh, I've experienced this before, because it's going into your long-term memory instead of your short-term. So that's your brain just being confused, which can happen. I mean, we're only human, and the brain isn't perfect. So that's always been my understanding. And once I read, not always, but when I researched this a while back, when I read that, I was like, well, that seems like something I can test. So, and any time since then that I've had deja vu or experienced it, I think about what I'm like, I stop and I take stock in what I'm doing right at that moment. And it's always when I'm taking in a lot of information, or there's a lot going on around me and I'm trying to process it all, or if my body's under like a lot of stress, that's when I experience deja vu. So maybe that's just one instance of deja vu, but then there could also be stuff that is definitely paranormal, or is dream based, or is, I mean, there's hundreds of less scientific theories that we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about a couple of them today, but those are that's the scientific theory that I ascribe to. That's the one.
Well,
that I think
it's interesting too, like the way that you described it right now too. I had read a couple things about short-term memory and people that have been like smoking pot like a lot. Like people who smoke pot a lot experience deja vu too. And there was one instance that I read where this guy, he had been like basically stoned for like 2 weeks straight, and he was like saying that was having excessive deja vu, like constantly feeling like deja vu, like constantly feeling that. And so I think that kind of goes along with what you were saying with like short-term memory and like stuff that's like not processing quick enough, because I imagine the pot was affecting his brain so much that it was probably like not processing shit. So to go along with what you're saying, it's interesting to think that like that's definitely a possibility, because if potheads are getting it more frequently because their brains are like, retarded or whatever. So for lack of a better word, they're just retarded and their brain isn't processing shit. Which, I smoked pot when I was younger, and I don't recall ever like experiencing deja vu while I was on weed, as on the weed when I was on the weed. But my deja vu experiences were always um things that like it was man like I can like I literally am able like when I have deja vu, I always am able to go, "Whoa, this is going to happen next," and like that's why I always say like I lean towards the paranormal is because personal experience, and it's so cool because we've always been saying like, have you ever experienced anything paranormal? And I like to think that this is that like this is me going, well, when I experience deja vu, I can literally like kind of know what's going to happen next like within a few seconds, right? Like somebody's going to get up, somebody's like usually like the interaction or like movements of people, and I don't know, like for me there's no way to explain that except that maybe I am like experience some sort of precognition or like I like to think that I dreamt the thing. I like to think that I dreamt this whole situation and now I'm actually experiencing it. That's
So
kind of
it's funny because you're always like, I've never experienced anything paranormal. But then as soon as we start talking about something, you're like, I've experienced this paranormal thing. And then you've got a story for it. So, like, all this time you've thought that you've lived like this normal, totally plain life of like natural order or whatever. But in reality,
right.
you're like the most afflicted by paranormal.
It turns out I'm psychic, bro. It turns out I'm
Oh, by the
psychic
way, I'm
the
actually
time.
the Antichrist.
Yeah, we
Um,
didn't.
so yeah, as far as dreams goes, I think there could be something to that, but I've never been able to. That's the problem with that one versus the one that I was talking about. Is like I can't necessarily test that because, and hopefully, I never have like dream based deja vu because I always tell you about my nightmares
Yeah,
because like
yeah.
I don't
Considering what
have
you had the other day, I hope you don't.
I never have normal dreams. I don't think I've ever talked about this on the show, but I don't have normal dreams ever. Um, because, well, I'm going to out you here. V and I both were diagnosed with PTSD, and I know I'll delve further into mine. I have major depression and then extreme panic attacks, so extreme anxiety with panic attacks, I should say, and then a number of other things that fall under that PTSD umbrella, like OCD and all sorts of other shit. But it all stems back to my time in the military, and it's funny because I didn't have any kind of what you call them symptoms or anything until my dog died, and then when my dog died, all of a sudden my brain just crapped out on me, and that's when I started suffering from all these things, and they started kind of compiling on top of one another. But I only have nightmares, so I have to take a pill called Prozocin that suppresses my dreams. Like I maybe have I assume I'm having dreams, but I don't ever experience them myself and I never remember them. But when I don't take my pill or if I wait too long after I take my pill to go to sleep, then I totally experience dreams, and they're always and forever nightmares. And they're never just like, oh, that was kind of a crazy nightmare. They're like, I wake up in a cold sweat, like just absolutely miserable in a bad mood for the rest of the day because it was such a traumatic dream, traumatic nightmare. So like that being said, I hope that I never have like those types of
Right.
dreams that become a deja vu experience because they'll always be and a lot of times they're very outlandish, sometimes they're very realistic, but so most of the time they're very outlandish and just very gory and scary in that way, like they could never happen. But there are times where they are very realistic, and I would definitely hope not to have that happen. But the let's see, you talked about the types of the excuses for them, right?
Right, right.
Was that all of them?
The quote unquote. Well, the only one I think that we didn't really touch on as much was the dual neurological processing, the one that is actually done by a study from this veterans hospital guy,
Yeah,
Robert
let's
Efron.
go ahead and
No
talk about that.
relation, no relation to
My buddy.
Zach. Yeah, your boy Zach, your boy Zach Efron. Apparently he did this study. At a VA hospital. The guy worked at a VA hospital. Now, interestingly, the guy continues to do this. Like he's one of the leading people that studies like this whole like brain. Like he's a neurologist, neurologist.
Neurologist.
Yeah, that. And so like he studies the brain and he's studying all these like strange occurrences from like dreams and deja vu and things that are having to do with like the entire brain, essentially, not just like one hemisphere or whatever, but the whole thing. So it's interesting because, first of all, the relation to the fact that he worked at a veterans hospital, that just makes me go, do the Earl, my name is Earl, frown and nod, or I go,
Yeah.
hmm.
Here, I'll do it for the camera.
Yeah, yeah, you have to yeah, that one. And I think the dual neurological processing is the one that we kind of said was probably similar to what you think it is, where it's just the brain is kind of like processing shit too fast or too slow, or
Yeah.
it's trying to catch up with itself. And um, it's basically like it says there's a slight delay of milliseconds between them, and so sometimes they're processed twice. So, which I think that's a pretty valid thing. I have to kind of like if I'm not gonna say no, it's not paranormal, bro, then I'm gonna say it's probably that. That's the one I'm gonna lean towards. So,
So I want to talk about the paranormal one that I believe it is, if anything. Okay. Well, I mean,
okay,
I'm not gonna poo poo away any kind of like, oh,
it's
it's a
not
psychic thing.
paranormal, bro.
I don't want to poo poo that one away, the psychic
Yeah,
one, because I think that
yeah.
could absolutely be the case. I do believe in psychics. I do believe that people are that people do sometimes have that ability to, the clairvoyance, clairsentience, clair whatever.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
think that's absolutely a thing, and I think it's not something that they can necessarily control or that they asked for. And I think it goes away. I think a lot of people are born with it, and then it just goes away over time because they don't. Because
Hmm.
I myself have had some very strange experiences where, like, I know even it doesn't have anything to do with deja vu. Like, I'll be thinking about a song, and then that'll be the song that comes on the radio, and it's not like a common song. Like right now, it would be like if I were sitting here, and then all of a sudden I'm thinking about the song "Spiderwebs" by No Doubt, and then it comes on the radio. Like that would not be a common song that would come on the radio, right?
Right.
But that sort of thing happens to me a lot, like those sort of little things. And I don't think I'm psychic. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm psychic. If I do have any kind of psychic ability, it's just living within me, and it shows up every now and again. But I'm not trying to harness it for any particular reason. Um, but I do believe that if that's not the case, and if it's not a scientific thing, I think that I've talked about it on the air a few times. The um, alternate universe, multiple timeline sort of idea, theory. So this one is a theory that has been, like, you can see here, it's been stamped by this fucking Instagram user's name, like all over
Yeah,
the
yeah,
place. Like this guy came up with it. I'm sure he did, and I'm sure he's
yeah.
not the
Fuck you, creepy enemies at
yeah
creepy
at
enemies.
creepy dot enemies underscore. Fuck you, dude.
Yeah,
Um,
fuck you, cat.
you added a piece of clip art from Google Images or whatever, and
Yeah,
copied and pasted something from not Instagram, Tumblr or whatever.
yeah.
So the idea that we live among millions of parallel universes containing millions of versions of ourselves carrying out our own lives with a diversity of different possibilities has always been a somewhat exciting thought. Deja vu could actually contribute to this theory. Believers in this theory claim that the human experience of deja vu can be explained by considering the unsettling feeling of having lived a moment before as a crossover with a parallel universe. This would mean that whatever you're doing while experiencing the deja vu, a parallel version of you is doing it in a different universe simultaneously, therefore creating an alignment between the two universes. So I'm a big advocate, a big believer in the multiple timeline, multiple universe, alternate universe theory, which, if
Hmm.
anyone ever says infinite realities or infinite dimensions, infinite timelines, call them an idiot, because that's not possible. If it were, there is a finite, it's a very high number, but it's a finite number of timelines. And if you ask them to explain how it's infinite, they won't be able to. But if you ask somebody to explain how it's finite, they will be able to. Because, and I'll do it right now, we start out with one timeline, and a decision is made, and it splits off. So that's two. No matter how many different decisions are made from that point, it creates a number of branch offs. So even though that number is going to be staggering and a number that
Hmm.
you can't even fathom with our human brains, it's still a finite number. So anytime anybody says an infinite number of timelines, call them on their bullshit, because they're wrong. And then ask them to explain how it's an infinite number of timelines, because they won't be able to.
That's
Uh,
pretty interesting.
the so that and that's just me being a nitpicker. Um,
But that's pretty interesting. Like it's funny. I have an interesting anecdote to add to that one,
Well, please do.
where you just said this like basically it's like an alternate. Like you think of like I always think of the movie The One with Jet Li,
Right,
where he does the
right,
"I
right.
am Yula, I'm nobody's bitch." Remember at the end
Yeah, yeah,
when
yeah.
he's standing on the tower? Anyways, it's a bunch of hymns that he kills throughout the different dimensions, right? And so your theory kind of goes along with that. Well, this theory, I mean, not yours.
No,
But
it's
somebody
mine. I'm
once
actually creepy.
your creepy what's his name?
Creepy
Enemies,
enemies. Yeah, I'm
creepy
creepy
dot
enemies.
enemies underscore. Um,
You better
somebody
keep that
once
on there.
somebody
Don't
once
don't
told
try
me.
cropping my username off of this picture because I totally came up with that theory.
So somebody once told me, and I'm trying to remember who it was. I feel like it was somebody I was in the army with, but they once told me that they had experienced deja vu so much that that when they started to experience it, they would immediately try to do something different than what they remembered. So like if in your deja vu state you're going, oh, and I put my right hand on my knee, instead you put your left hand on your knee. And it's like to that person, man, I'm trying to remember. I feel like it was somebody I knew in the army, and they were like, uh, so I would do something different, and that would like mess up the reality or something. And I kind of never understood that, but like now thinking about like the different dimensions, like if there's another me in another dimension, and like for some reason our like timeline like matches or something,
You
like
got to
are
be
we?
like, I hope he's doing okay because I sure as shit am not. Like,
Yeah.
I hope he's doing better than I am.
Yeah, yeah, he's all doing well and like
I always tell.
does
I was
like a
talking
good
to
job.
Dave. I was talking to Dave the other day, and he said something about the multiple timelines and the alternate versions of myself. And I said those guys are dicks. So that's my favorite answer whenever somebody starts talking about the. If you really want to blow your mind, think about it this way: every movement that you make, it creates an alternate timeline, right?
Right?
So
That's yeah.
if you touch your left knee with your left hand, there's an alternate version of you that didn't, and then there's also another one that for whatever reason touched his right knee. So
Yeah, yeah.
like, you've got all these, and then you can get into it further. So I mean, and then imagine doing that for 7 billion people. And then over time, however many people have existed over the course of human history, or even the universe's history, because it's not just humans making these decisions; it's any kind of anything with any reasoning or logic. It creates these alternate timelines. So
Right.
that's why people say, "Oh, these infinite timelines." Well, it's not infinite; it's finite. There's just a lot of them, and
Right.
it'll blow your mind. But then you can go into it further, talking about how like the quantum immortality, where you're like, well, when you die, you will never actually die because you just every time you almost die, or every time a decision that you make would ultimately lead to you dying, you just move into the version of you that didn't make that decision. So the one that dies is the one that you just kind of leave behind, and you won't ever recognize the movement from your sentience to one from one to the other. You just kind of move to the other one, don't realize it. But yeah, that's the whole quantum immortality, and then like the quantum suicide. Like you could sit there and put a gun to your head and pull the trigger, and it won't go off. But in all these other alternate timelines, it did go off, and then you know, but you will never die, and you'll
And
just
then
watch everyone
you
around you
you
die.
and then you gain the powers of all the other yous and you become Hula.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens.
I am nobody's beach.
That's exactly what happens. It's scientifically proven. No, it's actually that's actually a topic of discussion in the scientific community. It's just in the quantum realm, which nobody like takes seriously because it's
It
all theoretical.
it's so
So
mind-blowing though. Like what you just said is like so crazy to think about. Like just like the fact that like something as simple as like picking your nose has created alternate versions of you in different realities, and it's to me it's like logical. It's easier to believe that just because there's like logic behind it, and you go, well, yeah, that's a timeline was created, especially because like we have so much pop culture that shows us how like timelines, which is funny because a lot of them don't. We're like, what was that on the? I always love that scene on the Endgame Avengers movie when he goes, well, it wouldn't actually be the future anymore. It's like, or it wouldn't be the past anymore because it's your future. Remember, they go to the
yeah,
past,
yeah,
but it's
yeah.
actually their future. And so it's kind of like an interesting way to like explain it where you go, well, yeah, I guess the time, what do they call it? Time heist. The
Time
time
heist.
heist, yeah, wasn't exactly what you thought it would be. But it is
The
kind of mind blowing. And like I remember when you first started getting into the what do you call it, quantum physics and stuff, and we kind of would discuss it. And I do like a little research here, so I try to be able to like keep up. But man, that stuff is gets confusing as shit. It is like really hard to understand.
Yeah, if you don't like, and I'm not great with the math, I really am not. Like, that's where I struggle. But, like, the way I look at it is somebody else did the math, and I'm just going to read their findings. Like, I can sit there and read the findings based on the math that they did and better understand it. And just as long as I trust their math. And then, because what do they have to prove? Like, nothing really. You know, they could sit there and they could be not like, it's not like they're the global warming people who are coming up with these weird models that benefits them because it's financially lucrative. But like the quantum guys are just like, what are they gaining from lying to any? But nothing really. They get called hacks and idiots, and you know, they get made fun of for coming up with these theoretical these theories really that
Right.
about nonsense is really what it boils down to. Because if you tried to explain what we were just talking about to anybody, they're gonna be like, well, that's stupid. You know, like, why would you tell me that? What good does that do me? You know, it doesn't
Yeah.
do me any good. It's not. There's no practical use for that information. But and it's not like they're gaining any money on it. And even like the books that you read on quantum physics and quantum mechanics and stuff, it's always in the discount bargain bin at the bookstores or whatever. Like, they're not making money, so like I can try. I'm like, well, I'm willing to trust their math because they're like the H.P. Lovecrafts of
There's
science.
nothing to gain from it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's in 100 years they might be popular, but not right now because even Einstein said that they were idiots. And then he later came around and said, well, maybe there's something to this. But yeah, so that's my opinion on it. I think that the multiple world theory, I'm big into that. That was a big part of my reasoning for getting into the quantum and the astrophysics world, was because I wanted to learn more about that, and I think it's pretty cool. And I think that that's totally a reasonable thing where like
Right.
some alternate version of me, he may be a dick, but now I know like what he's
Fuck
going
that
through
guy.
because yeah, what a fucking asshole. I hope, you know, I hope everything's going well. What is it he says on the Chappelle show? He's like, I hope all the bad things in life happen to you and nobody else but you. Uh, but yeah, they I think that that's totally a reasonable thing, and I think it falls in line too with when they were talking about when I was learning about astrophysics too. They talk about how the universes are actually, you know, like in the shape of a globe. They're spherical and they exist within their own, you know, universe. But then there are all these other ones that are kind of bouncing off of each other, and like we don't really know what's going on in these other uh, globe universes, and it doesn't
Hmm.
matter because it's not part of our universe, and there's so much of our universe left unexplored that who cares about what's going on in those other universes.
Right.
But at some times when they bounce off of each other, some of what they're experiencing can kind of rub off on us, so which is a lot of the, yeah, they better not be rubbing on us.
Yeah, I was gonna say nobody
Leaving
nobody
their,
rubs off on me.
no, it's the Joe Bidens of universes just sniffing on us. But no, that's a lot of. There are some theories about residual hauntings coming from that. Even intelligent hauntings, really hauntings, the paranormal. There's a lot of paranormal overlay with these sort of things, like when they rub up against each other. Uh, do we absorb some of what's going on in their universe into ours? Is it an overlay rather than like a bouncing off of one another, and that's why we end up seeing things that aren't there? Is that why some weird things happen? Is that sort of stuff? So I mean, that's kind of what got me into it and learning a little bit more about that. And I think it does play. I think I tend to, when it comes to deja vu, I think I just assume, I'm like, well, this is one of those things that like the brain is such a weird thing that it could probably be explained away through science and through just being lazy and being like, well, yeah, the brain is weird. It probably is because of that. But also at the same time, I could easily be swayed if somebody was like, well, no, hold on. Like, you know, what you do with hookers. Like, hold on, let me tell you this. And then I'm like, all right, okay, hookers, I get it.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, you're right. I
Yeah.
take back my critical comments of the sex worker community. But no, I think I can easily be swayed into thinking that it's a paranormal thing. I do think I have a couple other examples
Yeah, I'm
here.
curious. I know there's a couple more. I'm curious to know. One of them, I kind of saw ahead. One of them, I'm actually really excited to like have more discussion about. But continue,
Oh,
please.
I think I know which one you're talking about. I'll save that one for a moment. So this one here, what if I told you that Deja Vu, and this is just a meme. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like it's anything other than what it is. It's just one of those advice animal memes, and basically pulled from Facebook. What if I told you that Deja Vu is when you do something so funny that God hit rewind to watch it again? Uh, I think I immediately have to discredit this one because never have I experienced deja vu when something funny or
Yeah,
interesting was
no, yeah,
happening. You know what I mean? It's always something super boring that I'm like, if that's God's sense of humor, then you know,
yeah,
shame on him,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Shame on God.
Shame on God.
So, and then
Jesus.
here's the one that I assume you were talking about. What if deja vu meant you lost a life and you're starting back off at your last checkpoint? Is that the one you were talking about?
Oh, I know. I was talking about the next one.
Oh, okay. Well, what are you talking? I don't even have any more. Are you
Yeah,
talking about the glitch in the Matrix one?
yeah, I thought that's
Oh,
what we were
okay.
talking.
Okay. No, this is the one I thought you were talking about because this is a pretty good theory, and I think if anyone were to try to convince me that this is I mean, I just sat and told you that your sentience transfers from one body to another in the multi-world theory. So if you were to try to tell me that this was the case, I'd probably believe you, or I'd be willing to hear you out. But then, is this the one that you were talking about? Are you looking at the screen?
Yeah,
Okay, is this the one you were talking about?
yeah. I thought we were
Okay.
going to talk about the glitch in the Matrix thing.
Yeah. Well, let's
Because
talk about the glitch in the
it's a
Matrix.
very real theory. Like I've actually seen a ton of like information online about these people that think like we're actually in a Matrix type situation. And it's interesting because there's all these videos and whatever about it, and then even that Kyrgyzstan thing that we watch every now and
Yeah,
then.
of course.
Those guys, they have one about it. And apparently to be able to create the Matrix, you would need like this massive computer that like it's like a quantum computer, basically.
No,
You
it's
would
more
need.
than that. It was like because I know which one you're talking about. I did watch that one where they were talking about aliens creating a simulation for
Yeah,
us.
yeah, yeah. And you would need like a Dyson sphere to power this
Yep.
computer or something.
Yep. And they have to
Like
build that
that's
big old machine around a sun or around a star.
so, but like, and like it seems far-fetched, but like it's possible. That's basically what they said is like it's far-fetched, but like yeah, somebody could do that. Somebody could definitely do that. They would have to have this much advanced technology. They'd have to have the energy source of the sun. They'd have to be able to create a Dyson sphere to get the energy from the sun, and then have a computer that's able to perform like trillions and trillions of calculations per second, which is like ridiculous to think about, but like yeah, that they could do that. And like the craziest thing is like they don't have to simulate everything. Like they just simulate what's in your general vicinity, right? So
Yeah, but they'd have
like
to do it for everybody. You know what I'm
well, yeah,
saying?
it's like even more crazy, like billions of people on Earth, but like then you go, well, what if it's not really billions of people on Earth? Like
It's
what
just
if
like
it's
five of us,
it's
and
just
they're
like
just
a
like
few.
managing. What a fucking boring thing. Like who's in charge of that? Where they're like, yeah, I'm totally tricking five people into thinking this big elaborate system of universe around them, but in reality, they're just in like a bathroom sized facility.
Well, I always like default to like video games. I go, well, what if it's like The Sims? Like, what, what if somebody was like, yeah, look, we want to play like real life. We want to like, it's kind of like, what was that movie, The Truman Show,
Yeah,
where they
yeah.
just watch one person and how they do, and like, what if that's what it is? Like, what if there's some alien race out there and like that's literally what they do is they go, oh, what's on channel Ryan Villalobos right
Yeah, do
now?
you think that
And
there are
they're
people
jacking
watching your
off.
show? Yeah, I was gonna say, do you think there are people on watching your show like, damn, this dude jerks off a lot? Like, I was thinking of like an alien playing Sims, and they're like, why does this character always beat off? Like, always.
Off so much. You won't stop jacking off. Can I play your character for a while? Mine won't stop jacking off. Yeah, that's probably what it is. It's probably some alien playing The Sims, only it's like Earth, like the fu
Let's Occam's razor this bitch. Let's do that.
Okay. Yeah,
What is
what's the
more realistic? What requires the least amount of what ifs? Is it aliens have created a Dyson sphere around a star and have everybody, maybe five people, in a simulation and they've created this universe for those people to enjoy and to think that they're living this elaborate, very, very elaborate life, human experience. Or is it possible that your brain may just be taking on a little too much and it's moving stuff to the long-term storage? V,
And they're
which
putting it
one
in the
is it?
queue. It's not ready for the queue.
So
You're like, hold on. It's like putting it in the backlog. You go,
let's
hang on. It's the file goes to the bottom of the pile.
I purposely picked mine and then the most illogical because I wanted you to have to pick mine. Kind of like on Family Guy when he's like, "No, which word better describes Brian? 14th century haberdasher or problem drinker?"
Yeah,
um
no other choice whatsoever. Well, to
so
be honest, and like to not stroke your ego or anything,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
to be honest, that is the one that I would say is most logically is that it's just your brain not processing shit quick enough, or
Okay.
it processes something twice. So you
Now
can
that I've got
celebrate that
you
one.
Now that I've got you back as the voice of reason, I'm going to go ahead and assume that it's an alien simulation. I'm going to become that voice. So let's Mr. Tachanka, aka a target, has said in the chat, what if everything just repeats and all of our memories have already happened, and when we die we repeat all our old memories and you wouldn't remember the original memories because you never remember stuff from when you were little, so you repeat all this stuff forever. As they say, there's nothing new under the sun, so all we're doing is replaying the past of ourselves, just repeating. So there's something to be said about that. There's the theory of biocentrism, and I bring it up occasionally. So a lot of people, the people who have consistently watched the show now, will have heard me say this before, and can be like, I feel like I've heard this before,
Hmm.
and say that they've experienced deja vu. But in reality, I have mentioned this before. Biocentrism is a very fascinating topic that I'm not even well versed in. I've read some stuff on it, and I'm working on learning more. But it's part of it is that you're kind of like everybody is doing their own thing, not necessarily at the same time. I may have, so for me, I'm living this right now, but you, V, for instance, may have already done your playthrough of your life a million years ago, is what is one of the facets of biocentrism. That's one of the things to consider. But also, there's a theory that you experience everything, you experience life through the eyes or whatever of everyone and everything. So you will experience my life, you'll live through me, and you'll play through my life and make all the same decisions that I made, and you'll just experience life as I did. Or that, like, I have gone through life countless times, however many times, and I've experienced life and I don't remember any of them, but it gives you a chance to kind of experience everything to kind of help you better. And I think this is part of the whole like progressive movement, where they're like, well, you know, if you do this, imagine like you were living as a third world refugee or whatever, like you've experienced that life before, so you should be more respectful, you should be more tolerant, or not tolerant, you should care more about their plight because like you've experienced it as well or will experience it in the future. But that's kind of like part of the whole biocentrism concept. So I think but then also hey Justin, welcome to the chat. Did you just get off of work? Waiting. um he's the one who always comes in whenever like we're in the middle
We're
of saying
talking about
something.
weird shit. Yeah,
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 and
yeah.
then he's like, hey, just got off of work. Oh, you guys are talking about dicks and stuff.
Yeah.
um but and then there's also the idea of like people talk about when you die and you are called up to heaven and it's judgment day and you have to watch your life all over again and be judged on your merits and the shit that you did in life. That could
Right.
also play into it, like maybe we're all dead and we're all rewatching our life, and that's why like I feel like I did this before, and then Christ is like, well, you did, this is a replay, that's what's happening. So who knows, I don't know, or maybe you're just reliving it again because that's how it works. I don't know, it's all subjective to like what you believe and what you think
Right.
happened. So I think there's some truth to that. I did tell Mike to share
Tell
his
us the story.
story as well, so I'm going to read that
Mhm.
real quick.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
the people who are listening at home and who aren't participating in the chat. Uh, Mike in Manitoba's experience with Deja Vu was he went to my brother-in-law's wedding in Alberta, leaned over his balcony on his patio, and they were taking wedding photos. The whole scene, I swear I lived before, freaked me right out. Was not in the Photoshop myself at the time, just watched them. Also, the conversation on the deck was included in that instance. So that's uh, he had previously stated that it wasn't something that he had dreamed before, but this was when he experienced the his instance of deja vu. For me, it's never anything like, um, yeah, it sounds like Groundhog Day, but for real life.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but for me, it's never anything like that I'll really ever remember because it's never anything memorable. It's not ever something where I'm like, oh man, I totally remember, walking across the yard or whatever. That's when
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
happens to me. Is it's always like I'm walking across the yard and the kids are yelling and I'm trying to carry something heavy or whatever. And I see a bird fly by. It's never something interesting where I'm like I can recount because I'll sit here all day and I'll not be able to think of a single instance in which I had deja vu, but I have it probably 2-3 times a week. So and it's funny because I was reading something too. The more stressed you are, the more likely you are to experience deja vu, which kind of goes in with the theory that I ascribe to, where it's like if you're under a great deal of stress or you're taking it a lot, then it happens. And it actually gave advice, like it gave advice on how to avoid deja vu, as if it's like this horrible thing, as if it's like chest pain or something. Like here's what you need to do to prevent deja vu. And I'm like, is anybody experiencing deja vu in such a way that they're like, oh my gosh, I need to get rid of this burden that's come about me, this curse of deja vu, I need to
Pro
eliminate it.
Probably epileptics and retards experience it a lot.
Well, I'm sure
I'm sure.
epileptics do for sure, but
Yeah,
because they're the ones who I remember you said it in one of the theories that they said was epileptics, and I
yeah.
think they already, and that's just further goes into it, is like that's somebody with
Right.
mental issues. So it kind of plays into that whole the brain is just a weird thing that again can just not work from
I
time to
like
time.
I really like the quantum stuff now. I'm kind of like leaning towards all that. It's really fascinating too because there's this, the whole idea with quantum is that we're all waves, like everything is waves, right?
Hmm.
Like we're all waves. And like that, like when I first learned about that, it blew my mind because like, well, everything's a wave, like literally, like everything's a wave. And so it made me start thinking about all these like things that like to me make sense, right? You go, well, if we're all waves, maybe that's why there are certain songs that we really are partial to because maybe it's syncing with our wavelength, right? Because it's
Yeah.
waves, right? It's all waves. And then you think, well, maybe that's why we experience deja vu is because our wavelength is syncing with some other me in another reality and we're syncing, right? Our waves are syncing. So like it's an interesting logic behind it that like borderlines the paranormal, I guess, but it still makes you go, well, it could be. It doesn't make you go, it's not fucking paranormal, dude. You know what I mean? You still go,
All those scientists that are just like, oh, it's not. You hit me right because we didn't study it in a
yeah,
laboratory.
exactly, exactly. It's not fucking paranormal,
I mean, are
dude.
you making fun of me too? Because I
Yeah.
was that guy the other day. It's not paranormal, dude. It's a totally
No,
normal thing. It's just your brain.
no, I guess cumulative, you and I when we're both doing that to each other. So the general of somebody going, it's not paranormal. Anybody falls into that category.
I can turn anything into a paranormal discussion.
I know. I always tell my dad whenever I talk to my dad about you, I always go, he could turn anything into a conspiracy. It's fucking crazy. It's like one moment we're talking about this, and he's like, "Did you know that fucking?"
Yeah, I find out everything. That's like if there's I think even the other day I was talking to James when Kobe Bryant's plane crashed or helicopter crashed or whatever.
Right.
He's like, so what's the conspiracy? And I'm like, well, I got to tell you, there's some weird things circulating about this right now. And I don't remember what I told him. It was some made up thing. But I said the helicopter knew something about Hillary Clinton, the Clinton Foundation.
Right.
Um, but yeah, no, I actually did read. Speaking of that, I actually did read. There was some chatter from the Iranians that they were the ones who actually sabotaged his helicopter. Like they had actually worked on it prior to that, and then all of a sudden, and then somebody tweeted from an Iranian account, like an official Iranian account, an eye for an eye or some nonsense, and that's how they tied the two things together. They were like, oh yeah, it was the Iranians that sabotaged Kobe Bryant's. Like anyone really gives like. So and what struck me as funny was we took out one of their high-ranking military generals, and then they take out Kobe Bryant in
Yeah,
response. Like, okay, like
our
you
famous
sure got
rapist.
us. You sure got us. You took
You
out a
got one of our
basketball
famous
player.
rapists.
You got a
Thanks.
you got a guy who could throw a basketball real good. Like, and we took out your guy who was like known for committing atrocities
Yeah,
on a massive scale. You totally got us. You burned
yeah, you
us.
got us.
All right, I guess we're even now,
Yeah,
Iran. Go back to whatever you were doing.
yeah.
Like, and
Oh,
and the funny thing is, like, the world had forgotten about Iran anyways. Like, everyone forgot about them when they launched those missiles and missed or whatever. And then they were talking about how like all of a sudden, all these soldiers were being treated for brain injury, right? And then
hmm.
like when you looked into it, they were like concussion, and you're like, kids kids get concussions. You know what I mean? Like it happens to everybody. So everyone wants to. Oh, these soldiers were hit. They're suffering from brain injuries. It's like yeah, so did like the high school football team like 8 times last season. So
Right.
I mean, yeah, you can make a big deal about that and use words like brain injury, but in reality, we all know that like a brain injury, like calling a concussion a brain injury is like calling, you know, cottage cheese, I don't know, spoiled milk. Like you're using words to uh, elude any kind of like to gross people out and get people outraged.
Right.
So what do we talk? How are we going to end this episode? I think we're done, right? I think
Yeah,
that pretty.
I
I,
feel like that's pretty good. I don't know.
Let me
What's
burn
a
through
good?
these. I got a couple words that people can also look into
Oh,
that
okay.
are also interesting in the topic of deja vu. Because deja vu in itself, I think when we talked, remember we talked about how MK Ultra wasn't really just like one project; it was 149 of them.
Right.
Deja vu isn't just one thing; it's actually a collection of a number of things, and there's three of them that were written about by this guy who studies deja vu
Hmm.
and a deja vuologist,
Yeah, the
deja
Efron
vologist.
guy. Was it the Efron guy?
Probably that guy. Oh no, I'm sorry. It was psychologist Arthur Funkhauser, which is actually
That's a good name.
I'm glad I saw his name because that was a funny name. He talks about the various different or a couple different things called deja vu, which can be translated to I've already experienced this, and that's the most common form of deja vu. So when you think of deja vu, you're actually thinking of something called deja vu. And please, any Canadians in the chat, if I'm pronouncing these French words wrong, just let me know because I probably will be. And then deja senti, which is it's explicitly human emotion, and it's directly translates to I have already felt this. And unlike the other two, it does not include the shade of paranormal and is something completely natural. So this is like a totally common, ignored, overlooked version of deja vu. Then there's deja visite, which is a more specific feeling. It is the paradoxical feeling that we know a place we have never visited before, and that's kind of what you had talked about. Um, we'll see you later, John.
Hmm.
And it's the one that you had kind of talked about, and I guess we kind of touched on a little bit with people who watch movies or travel a lot. So
Right.
when I think that's pretty common for them because they'll have seen something before and they've never necessarily been, or it may just be reminiscent of something that they visited. Then there's deja reve, which is literally translates to already dreamed, which is another one that you talked about. It's
Right.
the feeling of having already dreamed something that you are now experiencing. Deja entendu, which means literally heard. It's the experience of feeling sure that you've heard something before, even if the details are uncertain or were perhaps imagined. That one I think has a lot. If you think about it, like anytime that you've heard a song that you've never heard before, but it sounds familiar, and you're like, wow, that sounds strangely familiar. I've never heard this song, but it seems familiar, which is now like less useful because everybody is just copying everybody else's music. So it's like you could hear something in a song, like especially Eminem. He's horrible about this. Like I haven't heard an original song from Eminem since like 1999.
Yeah.
And all of his stuff is just he's using old songs for hooks and shit. And then you have Jamais Vu, which means never seen, and it's a familiar situation which is not recognized by the observer. And then Presque Vu, which means almost seen. The failure to remember something with the sense of recall is imminent. So that's a good example of when you're like, what's that thing called? You know, and you're sitting there thinking about it. That's Presque Vu. It's on the tip of my tongue. But yeah, that's what that one is. There's another one. I must not have it. But there's one where it was like, you don't necessarily like something that you should recognize, but you don't, and it's just like a feeling. I could swear I saved that one, but
isn't there one too that's like, it's like when you remember the lyrics to a Snoop Dogg song, it's like Deja Vu.
that's the one. That's
Deja
Buckle
Vu.
Bizzle, and put your seat bizzle, nizzle.
Yeah, Vizzle. Deja Vizzle.
That's the one.
Yeah.
That's the important one. Snoop Dogg, man. No, the boys actually asked me. They're like, "Do you know who Snoop Dogg is?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he was a murderer. He murdered somebody back in the '90s." And they were like, "No, he raps." And I was like, "It's the same guy. He also he raps, but he's also not a convicted murderer, but he murdered somebody."
Wasn't he Snoop Lion for a while? Wasn't he a lion at some point?
Briefly, he tried to do reggae and he failed. But like, name a Snoop Dogg song that's come out in the last 20 years.
Yeah, I can't.
Yeah, exactly. No one can. And like, for whatever reason, he's remained in popular culture just by being Snoop Dogg. So like, you have to admire that sort of brand recognition because he's not done anything in 20 years.
Yeah, it's true.
But at the same time, you're like, well, I know that guy. Like, and I saw him on a commercial the other day, and
he has a podcast now, and it's it's actually I don't know. I recommend watching an episode of it because you'll definitely be like, "What, Snoop? Like what? You're not a host. You're not a host of anything."
Mike told me my French sucks.
Yeah, no surprise there.
Well, I'm an American, so you know what they say. Somebody who speaks 3 languages. Also, by the way, welcome to the chat, Cirque du Suck. I don't know if that's supposed to be Cirque du Suck, like Soleil, or if it's Cirque du Suck as the spelling would allude. But
Cirque du Soleil.
But yeah,
Cirque
somebody who speaks
gay.
somebody who speaks 3 languages is trilingual. Somebody who speaks 2 languages is bilingual. What do you call somebody who speaks 1 language?
I don't know. Lingual.
American.
American.
Because we only need one. Because everybody's out there using our language anyways. So wherever we go, typically there's going to be somebody who speaks English. Even the kids in China are learning English, which I don't know why. Not like they're going to live long enough to use it with their contra virus or whatever.
What is it
Coronavirus. That's
Coronavirus. Yeah, Corona. I thought it was Chroma.
Yeah, that's a different thing. That's
the Chinaman.
Come on, V. V. So how are we going to end this episode here?
I don't know.
What are we talking about? We did Deja Vu. What's a fun game that we can play with Deja Vu? Or what's a fun topic that we can talk about with Deja Vu? I didn't come prepared for this.
I don't know. I don't know. I was thinking about this earlier, and I was thinking, well, what exactly can you like get the audience involved in? Where you go, hey, when you experience deja vu, like why I always say when I experience deja vu, I instantly go, what can I do to like alter reality, or how do I change this from being deja vu anymore, or how do I go like how do I predict something? I start to try to like predict anything. But I mean, everybody I think can say they've experienced deja vu, right? Like,
yeah,
pretty much.
I think so.
I would think everybody's experienced deja vu.
Let's give everybody homework. That's how we should end this episode. Next time you have deja vu, you got to like pull your dick out and see if it see what happens. Like you end up ripping a hole in the fabric of space time by,
Yeah.
and you're standing there with your dick out with the fabric ripped, and like George Washington and like historical figures coming out of it, like Thomas, put your penis away.
You just have all these different realities coincide like right next to you,
And
and
then
you're
I become the one where I have to fight all the other versions of myself,
yeah,
and just
yeah,
hope that they're all equally as fat and out of shape as I am.
yeah. That's pretty likely, I'm assuming, for
Yeah.
at least in
No,
my
I know
case.
there's no, because let's be honest. There are versions of me that, like, at the time when I started to gain weight, he was like, I need to start eating healthier. And that Tom Miller, that version of me, he's fucking ripped.
Could you imagine meeting like the version of you? Like there's that movie with Paul Rudd out now where he's like he like has this version of him made that's like the best version of him. Could you imagine meeting like the you that is like the best version of you? And he's just like, dude, like you are looking soggy around the midsection.
You are a terrible, you're the worst damn display of Tom Miller I've ever seen in my life.
Look at you, look at you.
Getting shamed by my better.
By yourself. Oh man. Classic.
So,
I, I don't know. That's all I got, bro. It's it. Other than like, thanks for watching and thanks for listening, guys. That's pretty much all I've
So
got.
that's
Next week,
I'm gonna stick to my guns on this one. If you experience deja vu this week, no matter where you are, pull your dick out, and then report back what happens. You can message. You can find us on Twitter at
yeah,
You Had Me Podcast.
yeah, there you
Um,
go.
but no,
Using the
let's do
plug.
it. Let's do a thing for real. Let's do that. You don't necessarily
Yeah,
have to pull your dick out. I
yeah,
will. That'll be
yeah.
my thing. I'll just because I really want to like interrupt the timeline. That's what I'm all about. But let's do something else too. I know
Okay.
a lot of you guys are embarrassed to share us with your friends, but let's make a change. Let's make a change here. Let's say everyone who's listening right now, if you've made it to the end of the show, you at least like this show enough to have stuck it out with us, and we
Stay to the end.
appreciate that.
You are the
And
one.
you are the one, and you're
You
better
are
than
the one.
all the alternate versions of you that decided not to listen all the way through. Uh, but you've made it this far, and I'm going to charge you. I'm going to put some shit on your shoulders today. Tell one person about You Had Me at Bigfoot this week, and let's see if we can bring someone. This isn't like trying to bring someone to church where you're like, oh,
Yeah.
you're gonna be sitting there for an hour and a half or 2 hours or whatever, like, and you struggle to come up with reasons to get them to come to church, right? This is, hey, just tune into You Had Me at Bigfoot. Check out their old stuff. You can find all their shit. It's on youhadmeatbigfoot.com. You can find all the episodes there. You can find them all on YouTube, all that bullcrap. Just encourage one person, because there's 7 of you watching right now. So that would mean 14
14.
viewers next week,
Well, no,
right?
because you can't count us because we're technically I'm
Oh
I'm
yeah, yeah,
actually
yeah, that's
watching
right.
too. So,
But
but I guess I could tell somebody. I guess I could tell somebody. Although
I'll tell somebody too.
the list of people that I
Mike,
know is pretty
Mike, I
pretty
need you
minimal.
to I
It's
need
like
you to
you and my
watch You Had Me at
dad, and
Bigfoot. Yeah, don't tell your dad about this show.
he already knows.
Oh, okay.
I'm always like, you wouldn't like it though.
my my brother-in-law watches it. Well, he listens to the show, I think. I don't think he watches it on YouTube, and I don't blame him. I wouldn't want YouTube like well, I'll tell 5 for extra credit about this. See, that's what I'm talking. That's the kind
What
of
a
fan
guy!
that we want, Justin Welker.
What a
Um,
guy!
but my brother-in-law listens to the show, and I can't say his name on here because he's well-to-do. He's in a professional profession.
Hmm.
He's a very
Hmm.
professional gentleman, so we don't want to somehow lump him in with the show,
Right.
and then he gets fired and shit. Uh, but he I guess was telling my in-laws about the show last week. He said he finally caught up, and he and I were talking about like the creation theory versus evolutionary theory, because it came up in the reptilian episode, and I guess he was talking about it, and then my in-laws were telling my wife, why was Tom talking about the creation theory on the podcast? And Leslie looked over at me like, why were you talking about that sort of stuff on the show? I was like, I don't even remember, because I couldn't remember at the time. I'm like, I don't remember why I was talking about it, but yes, I did talk about it at one point, and I got chewed out in the chat. But they, yeah, so like my in-laws, I highly encourage them not to read. They used to watch our stuff on YouTube when we used to make videos and stuff, even though it was
Really?
like super profane and stuff. But yeah, that's another thing. People who are on here watching, we used to do V and I used to do videos back when YouTube was a baby, and some of them are pretty funny. Like some of them are still pretty funny. Like if you watch them, the maybe I'll drop that in the chat. And I don't have access to the YouTube channel anymore. If I did, I'd capitalize on that more. But yeah, we did some funny stuff on that channel, so I'll post that in the or in the replies
Back when we
or
were the
description or whatever
pioneers
the
of
hell.
bad YouTube
Yeah, we
videos.
were. But our stuff was actually like, at least like now you watch stuff and you're like, this is garbage. And then like you look at our stuff and you're like, it was garbage, but it was funny. And it was like,
Right.
we cared about the finished product. Unlike now when you see kids with like a cell phone video or something.
Right.
So, all right, people at home, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you sticking it out with us until the end. I like that eggplant there in the chat there, V. Appreciate that.
That means
So,
penis. Did you know that?
no,
Eggplant means
I know. Believe me, I know.
eggplant.
I know what the eggplant emoji means. So, no, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Hopefully next week we'll talk about something weird. If you have any recommendations for what we talk about next week, leave them in the comments below, and we will consider them, and frankly probably do it, because we're running out of ideas. We usually come up with an idea at the last possible minute and then throw something together. So yeah, leave a comment below. Make sure if you like the episode, hit that thumbs up, and if you didn't like it, hit the thumbs down. Or if you just want to be a dick, hit the thumbs down. That's cool too. You can also subscribe by clicking the bottom right hand corner, or by clicking the button that says subscribe down below. We'll talk to you next time. V, did you already hang up?